Well, it's time to say goodbye to the donor car here. I had it all cut apart, as you well know, to get the front clip off of it. And then I said to myself, how the heck am I going to get this out of the shop? So I took the Challenger front subframe parts and I kind of bent them back into shape, just enough that I could reassemble everything, weld it back to this car. Just enough to get the suspension back under it in the front, dump the balloon motor back in it, motor and trans. And hopefully somebody's coming to get it this morning. Give me $100 for the rest of this, and I'll get it off my property and out of my hair. There's nothing really. This 240,000 mile car, pretty much all the suspension pieces are shot. And so while I was thinking about maybe I could hang on to this for maybe a future project, it doesn't make any sense. The thing doesn't have a title. The front clip on it is junk, obviously, because I put the crashed front clip on it. So what are we talking about at that point? You know, you have to replace all the suspension, bushing, anything that's got a rubber bushing in it, and so forth. So there's really nothing here that's of any value to me at this point. It's a base model in the sense it's got a 2.7. So, okay, it's got a good dash pad, and there's unblown airbags, but those airbags are recall airbags in there, so there's that. So they're not really worth that much. And so off it goes to the junkyard, hopefully sometime today. Haven't really posted too much on this project. Been pretty busy at work, and I'm trying to give the old wallet a little bit of a rest. And you know how that goes. When you're paying as you go with these projects, you gotta whoa it up every once in a while. All right, that's it for now. So it's been a while since I posted any videos, because I haven't really worked on this since about November, and I'm just now starting to try to get back to it. It's May. It's a pretty long break, but other things needed to get done. And the little intro piece that I put in front of this video was actually taken in the middle of the winter time. That was me getting rid of the donor car. And why I started here is because I'm getting ready to put this car back down on the ground. I've just finished up the underside, cleaning everything up, and I temporarily put this old exhaust back underneath the car, just so I can fire it up and it won't be ridiculous, and I won't get a bunch of heat under the seat, because in case I want to test drive it or something like that, if I get it running, when I get it running. Referring to that, I've got the dash pad back in. There's a few scratches in it. I was a little disappointed in that, but you don't really get very many used dash pads, because if they're in a wreck, they're usually blown apart. So instead of paying, like I said in previous videos, $1,900 or whatever, I could get it on the internet, probably $1,200 with a discount. This was about $600 shipped, with 2 new airbags that came along with it, and also a dash frame, which I didn't need the dash frame, but it was a pretty good amount of stuff for not a lot of money. So I'm going to try out my skills with a vinyl repair kit, and there's one big gouge in the top over here that I'm not too happy with. You can see it right across there, but I think that can be fixed, at least from some of the video tutorials I saw online about vinyl repair. So I'm putting back the car just enough so that I can fire it up, which means it needs all its bells and whistles. The seats need to go back in, get plugged in, and all that stuff, so I don't have any kinds of warning lights going off. Started to put the fluids back in the car. My only real disappointment is I learned on this Daytona how to properly bleed these cooling systems, and on the front of the block here is at the top of the water pump, there's a small pipe fitting that's a plug. And what you're supposed to do is take that out, and as you can fill it cold with that out and pour all the fluid in that you need, which is, by the way, it's quite a large capacity system. It's actually 16 quarts in this system if you're going from bone dry, which I'm not 100% sure that I got all the water out of the block. Probably not, because I was able to put in probably 2.5 gallons. I have another 1.5 gallons that may need to go in once this is fired up and it starts to circulate. But what this does, this allows the air out of the highest point on the motor, so you can fill it cold without having to worry about opening up the thermostat, which is on this side of it. So this can stay closed, and most of your reservoirs over here, so it'll fill up almost your entire system, and then it should start to bleed out here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to break this loose. I broke a couple of Allen sockets trying to free it up, but it's frozen there really well. I put a lot of PB blaster and those types of things to try and get it loose, but it's not budging. Outside of drilling it out completely, I don't know any other method of really getting that free without creating a big giant job for myself. So what I did do is, while I was filling it up, on this side there's a water temperature sensor, and it's on the other side of the housing, just opposite. And I just unplugged it and unscrewed it, which allows the air to come out of that area. It's not as reliable as this one over here, because what you can do with this one is you can actually put when you take the plug out, is you can take a brake bleeder valve and put the brake bleeder valve right in this same position, so that if you ever have to get the air out of the system, you've got an air bubble locked in the system, you can get the air out just by opening up the brake bleeder valve. And I have a little tube, so it's very neat, so you don't have antifreeze spilling down the front of your motor and so forth. You can put a nice clear tube going into a jug, which I have a little setup over here that I use to bleed all the air out of the charger. It's just a bottle with a little piece of vinyl tubing that plugs onto the front of the brake bleeder, and it works for the antifreeze. So starting to put the brake fluid in. I've got to bleed the brakes. I've got to get the gas filler put back in the car, because obviously it's a sealed system, and without the filler and the cap on, it will not start, or it will not properly. There'll be bells and whistles going off without the cap on and the complete system sealed up. What I didn't mention in one of the other videos that I had a problem with, re-putting in these brake lines into this top block. If you don't get these brake lines completely lined up correctly, you really stand the risk of cross-threading it, and that could be a real disaster. So I had an incident where this one in particular was starting to cross-thread, and I searched high and low to figure out what the thread is in this block. It's not a pipe thread, and I couldn't find any sort of tap dies. I asked the machinist at work, what kind of a tap die do I need a tap to go in here to clear these threads, to make sure that it doesn't, cross thread when I get this, because it's aluminum and had a little bit of, smudge in there. But I did find a trick on the internet that worked great. I had the old brake line that came out of this is a replacement. I had the old brake line, and I took this fitting, and if you'll take a tiny Dremel tool with a small abrasive wheel and cut a couple grooves across the threads, maybe three grooves or so on the threads vertically, it almost acts as a tap, and it worked great. I just slowly wound it in, and those little grooves, vertical grooves, allowed the material to clear out. I cleared out the little bit of cross-threading at the very top of this, and was able to get that brake line to fit in, and was able to save that, which I was pretty happy about that. So that's where we're at on this so far. I'm going to get it to the ground here pretty soon. That's why I showed you the underside of the car. And hopefully a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. I got to get a battery for it. It's got one of those big, giant, long batteries. About $200 for those batteries. But I have 2 batteries, but I'm not getting full with them. They're so old. The date code's already out on them, and I'm not going to try to charge them. So I've got to get that. But just last weekend I had another little bit of a distraction. The fellow that sold me this car down in South Carolina called me up out of the clear blue, and he said he was wanting to get rid of something else that he had on his front lawn. And so let me go turn the lights on here. I was happy to go and take some of his lawn art away. And this is a '69 Roadrunner shell, which I thought it was just a shell, but there's a lot of parts that came with it that go with the body. And when I talked to him, I had in mind the same thing, the idea of maybe doing another body over project with this car. But it's really a solid car. And the frame rails, there's the normal stuff, the floor pans, you know, got some Swiss cheese going on. The inside of the trunk is pretty good, but there's actually a replacement trunk floor in the trunks. So what I was thinking I probably am going to do, because I'm not a restoration guy, I'm not savvy enough to know what's correct on these cars and what it needs and where to go for all the parts and so forth. And it's frankly not my cup of tea. I like the Resto Mod stuff, but this car is really in too good a shape. I haven't, seen a car this old that has this little bit of rot and rust on it. There's a little bit around the back window, but I went over it with a magnet, and there's a little bit of, well, here's the worst of it. The rear lower, the Dutchman panel here has the base of the window track is a little eaten out. The rest of it's really good though, all the way around. All of the substructures in the roof are really solid. Package tray's good. Like I said, in the trunk, there's some stuff that's it doesn't have this. It has all the springs and everything, but they're not on it. Front valence, front grille, a bunch of knickknacks, some wiring, taillight housings, the cast aluminum corners and so forth are in there also. Some beauty rings, a couple of original wheels, yeah, my plan for this at this point right now is I'm just banking it. Just set it here because it's too much of a distraction to deal with it right now. I've got this other project I haven't been able to get to, so I'm not going to get involved with this one right now. But I might get it soda blasted, see if there's any more flaws than what I can see, and get it up on a rotisserie and maybe fix the metalwork that needs fixing and get it in an epoxy primer, and then maybe pass it along to someone else who wants to have a nice clean base to start from to either restore or build their own Resto Mod. But it was like a little orphan. I had to go get it. So these things come up. You got to move on them if they're the right price, and they were the right price. It was the right price, I should say. So that's where I am right now, and I have a pretty unique plan for this car, but I'm still working out the thises and that's and the particulars of it. I'm not 100% sure it's going to work, but it'll be pretty cool if it does work. And of course, I'll let you know when I get to that point. Thanks a lot for watching.